Hello fellow hunters, this is Ted Steinke, and I would like you to join me on several hunts for my favorite big game animal, the proud and majestic bull elk. We'll be hunting him at the most exciting time of the year, during the fall rut, when the bulls are bugling and are gathering harems of cows during the breeding season. I'll be showing you some exciting footage of bulls being called in close. You'll hear numerous vocalizations made not only by the bulls, but by cows and calves. Did you ever have an unseen bull barking at you in the timber and you didn't quite know what to do with him? Well, I'll show you the calls that I use to bring them in close. We'll take you along on several successful bow hunts in Wyoming. And then on to New Mexico, where I bag a nice 6x6 bull with a muzzleloader. And then we'll take you on to several successful rifle hunts. We'll show you what it takes to be successful. Now in this video, our bull busting isn't limited to hunting the bull elk. We'll take you along on a successful bow hunt for the largest member of the deer family in North America, the powerful bull moose. We'll show you some exciting footage of bull moose in the rut. You'll hear the vocalizations of the cow moose and the bull moose during the fall breeding season. And you'll see how easy it is to learn how to call them in close. Now sit back and enjoy. During the fall rut, the bull is stimulated by the sight, sound, and smell of both cow elk and other bulls. How he reacts depends upon whether the other elk are cows, calves, dominant bulls, or lesser bulls. The sight and sound of another bull will trigger the aggressive herd instincts of a dominant bull. If a dominant bull sees a lesser bull with a herd of cows, he will move in and take the cows away from the lesser bull. His intent is to add the cows to his own harem. This 3-year-old bull has taken over a small group of cows and calves. Although he is sexually mature, he isn't old enough or large enough to be a dominant bull. In his attempts to court with and mate with the cows, his overstimulation works against him as an individual. However, it works for the betterment of the species. He gets so carried away with the courting of his cows that he draws attention from a neighboring herd bull. You would think that he would be smart enough to keep his mouth shut and to keep out of sight. But it doesn't work that way with the elk. Their instincts are just too strong. They compel him to follow the cow that has strayed from the herd and to advertise his presence by bugling. Watch as the herd bull sees him and then comes over to steal his cows. The end result is that the dominant bull will ultimately mate with the cows and will pass on his superior genes to the offspring. Thus, the next generation benefits from the bloodlines of a bull that has proven his power, strength, and competence in the real world. Notice in the following sequence that the herd bull has been stimulated by the excited actions of a cow who comes running into the herd. She has either been pursued by another bull or by a predator. In either event, her actions cause an instant response by the herd bull who comes rushing over. Now watch and listen to what triggers these bulls, because these are the keys that you can use to call bulls in close. Now those nasal squealing sounds that you are hearing are being made by the smaller bull. This type of exciting action is the reason that elk are such interesting animals. Notice that the younger bull gave up and left the herd without putting up a fight. He immediately recognized the superior size and strength of the dominant bull. I hope you are paying attention to the nasal whining and mewing sounds of the elk up close. These are the sounds that a bull expects to hear as he enters a herd. The hunter who wants to consistently call bulls in close learns how to perform this cow talk. Now watch what effect a realistic sounding bugle has on the herd bulls. Notice that as the bull approaches his new herd of cows, he gives some soft nasal calls and then a glunking sound. These are common whenever the bull gets in close to a group of cows, and they seem to reassure them that his presence is okay. It's a good call for the hunter to use if you want to call a bull in close. Notice that the cows also recognize his superiority, and they started filtering over to join his harem. This is nature's way of assuring that most of the cows are bred by superior bulls. Once the herd bull has chased off the smaller bull, he puts on a display which is both for the benefit of the bull he just defeated and for the cows he just acquired. Now in the preceding action, it was easy to see why the herd bull came over. His senses of sight, sound, and smell were fully stimulated. The lesser bull and the cows gave him visual stimulation. His sense of hearing was stimulated by the sound of the lesser bull's bugles and by the cow talk. And his sense of smell told him that there were other elk present, especially cows. Now obviously it's going to be a lot harder for you to call in a bull, because you cannot allow the elk to see you, and you cannot allow the elk to smell you, and you can't allow them to hear any sounds which identify you as a human or as a predator. If you do, the elk will quickly vacate the premises. With a high-powered rifle, you might have a chance. With a bow, it's almost hopeless. If you want to call elk in consistently, you must learn how to sound like an elk. The elk rut starts in late August or early September, and it lasts into the first part of October. Bulls become more vulnerable to hunters at this time of the year for several reasons. First, their bugling and vocalizations can be heard at long range. These not only allow the hunter to pinpoint the location of the elk and to move in close, but they also allow the expert caller to call the bulls in close. The second reason is that bulls are more active during the rut. They eat and sleep little, and they are constantly on the go. The mature bulls may be found with the herds of cows now and are easier to locate. The breeding urge and the bull's preoccupation with courting the cows causes him to lose some of his natural alertness and caution. The bull periodically checks out each cow with antlers held high. This is his courting posture. He does this to determine which of the cows may be ovulating and receptive to his mating advances. The bull has a remarkable structure in the top of his palate, which is called Jacob's organ. After getting a good whiff of a cow's scent, he raises his head and curls back his lip to expose this sensing device. It analyzes the cow's urine for the presence of pheromones or hormones which indicate that the cow is coming into heat and will be receptive to his mating advances. But this time his analysis is interrupted by the bugling of a nearby bull. His concentration changes to listening to the other bull to determine if he's a threat or if perhaps he may have some cows to steal. This is the bull's herding posture. The bull stretches his neck out straight and tilts his head back so that his antlers are parallel with his back. This posture is used to herd a cow back into his harem. Any other bull bugling near the herd will be answered as if the bull is trying to shout down his opponent. Bugling within the herd serves several purposes. Number one, bugling actually attracts the cows. Second, once the cows are within the harem, his bugling helps to establish a bond with that cow so that she is less likely to leave. Third, his bugling warns challengers that he's big and mean and ready to fight, and if the challenger knows what's good for him, he'll keep his distance. It's a form of out-advertising his opponents. Bugling by an older bull nearby actually inhibits bugling from smaller bulls. That's the reason that a lot of bow hunters try to sound like a smaller bull when they're bugling in another bull. Studies have shown that the cows are attracted to a bull with large antlers. Cows tend to remain in the herd of an older bull because he offers them security and protection from the harassment of younger bulls. The cows really aren't interested in mating with the smaller bulls anyway. The herd bull treats the cows considerately. A large bull can be quite gentle in his courting, whereas a younger bull must dart in when he gets the chance and court as quickly as possible before the herd bull sees him and reacts by chasing him off. Thus, there is a definite difference between the hasty courtship of a younger bull and the deliberate, confident courtship of an older herd bull. Herd bulls try to silence their competition. Another bull calling close to the harem is likely to be answered by the herd bull. If he can't silence the competitor by bugling, the herd bull may temporarily leave the herd to search out and attack the intruder. This is one strategy that successful bow hunters use to call bulls in close. But in order for it to work, you must sound like another genuine bull, and you must bugle at the same intervals as another bull would bugle. In other words, you've got to sound realistic. A lot of hunters have problems with herd bulls gathering up their harems and leaving when the hunter gets in close and bugles. A lot of outdoor writers say that the reason the bulls leave is because they think the challenging bull will try to steal his cows. But I disagree with this, because I've seen a lot of herds when I've been hunting and filming, and never have I seen a herd bull pick up and leave because a real bull bugled nearby. But I've seen plenty of situations where the herd moves the other way when I or another hunter bugled. Now I can't read the elk's mind and know why he's moving away, but I feel the reason that they do this is that the hunter doesn't actually sound like a real elk, and they get suspicious. I know I've never been completely fooled by a hunter who I thought was definitely an elk. Let's face it, most hunters who try to bugle are not really that good at it. A lot of them are good enough to pass at long range, and they're good enough to bring the bulls within rifle range. But as you get close, only a hunter with little experience, or an elk with little experience, or only a bull who is crazed by the rut would think that they were real. Now I've been fooled by some hunters who I thought sounded very much like an elk, but at the same time I thought to myself that there was a 50-50 chance that they might be a hunter. Never have I been completely fooled by another hunter. Now if I can tell a difference, so can a big old mature herd bull. It's no wonder then that an experienced herd bull moves away from a poor sounding bugle. They don't get old by rushing into every cheap sounding imitation. You should strive to sound good enough to the bull to confuse him. And if you keep following him, and if you keep bugling, sooner or later you're going to get him irritated enough to turn around and come on in. Now I realize I'm not the best sounding hunter in the woods, but I have bugled in over 80 bulls to 35 yards or less, and every year I bugle good enough to call in several bow hunters, or I have several hunters following me around. But if I was better yet, and sounded like the real classic bulls in this video, I would bugle in twice the number of bulls that I bugle in now. Now I'm not going to try to teach you how to bugle here. We don't have the time, and besides, there's plenty of audio tapes on the market that can do that. And anyway, how good you get is mostly up to you. My advice for you is to go out and get yourself a grunt tube and an elk diaphragm call and practice. Now if you can't use the elk diaphragm call, then get one of the external reed calls and practice. And when you practice from the tape recordings of a live bull. Don't imitate another hunter who has made a tape recording of himself. After all, you want to sound like a real bull, not like another hunter. Elk are most active in the early mornings and the late evenings. I called this bull in the late evening. These are some of the calls that I use to call him in. As I stated before, don't imitate me, imitate the live elk. As you call in a bull, a lot of times they'll stop and start raking on a tree, or if they're out in the open like this one is, they'll start tearing up the turf. They'll dig their horns in the dirt, and they'll be pawing the ground with their forelegs, and they'll be urinating. Now this does a couple things. It's a stalling tactic for one thing. They're waiting to see the other bull. And at the same time, they're trying to impress the other bull and any nearby cows with how big, strong, and mean they are. And since antlers are a symbol of strength and power, this also provides the challenger with a good view of his antlers. Now this is why you want to be calling from cover. If you're out in the open, the bull expects to see you. If he can't see another bull out in the open, he becomes suspicious. But if you're calling from enough cover to conceal another bull, and you're making realistic sounds, you can sometimes get them to cross an opening like this. Now I don't have anything against rifle hunters because sometimes I hunt with a rifle myself. But there's a world of difference between rifle hunting and bow hunting. Getting the elk up close is what makes bow hunting so exciting and so challenging. If you were rifle hunting, you would have pulled the trigger on him a long time ago. But as a bow hunter, you get the privilege of seeing him come in close. Your short-range weapon requires that you take a short-range shot at a standing or slowly moving broadside target. Now this only adds to the excitement. This is the type of thing that can really blow a bow hunter's mind, when that big old bull stops out in front of you and he's right head on. Now when he's positioned like this, you don't have a chance at all for a shot with a bow and arrow. You've got to wait until he turns broadside so that you can get an arrow into the heart and lung area where it does the most good. Now there's your shot. He's fully broadside now, and I would aim about 3 inches behind the powerful shoulder muscle and about half the way out from top to bottom. That gives you your greatest leeway if you misjudge the distance or if you pull your shot off to the right or to the left. You don't want to hit him in the shoulder bone because your arrow won't penetrate. Now I don't think you can ask for a better situation than this. Right there when he puts his head down. Now if you played it right and the wind didn't switch, this animal should be yours. That is, if you remembered to aim and to release properly. I'll tell you what, I can't think of anything more exciting than being in this position with a bow and arrow in your hands. Some hunters get so excited that they simply forget to aim and they miss the whole animal. I know because I've seen it. Our next situation shows two bulls about to do battle. The smaller bull has a herd of cows, and the larger bull wants them. Notice that most confrontations simply end with bluffs and threatening gestures, but with no real fights. There's something special about hunting with a muzzleloader that takes you back to the days of the mountain men and the fur traders, when one shot is all that stood between being well fed and going hungry, or of killing your enemy, or of being killed. If you riflemen are looking for a challenge, then take up elk hunting with the muzzleloader. I never feel so close to the men who opened up this great mountain country than I do when I'm carrying around the smoke pole in big game country. The challenge of the muzzleloader is that you only get one shot, and you'd better make it a good one. You're shooting with a rifle that has open sights and has a limited power and a rainbow trajectory once you get past 100 yards. Once you get past 100 yards, your accuracy falls off and your bullet's energy decreases to the point where it has questionable power on an animal with the size and tenacity of an elk. Our muzzleloader hunt takes place in New Mexico, in country that was covered with ponderosa pine, cedar, and sagebrush. The elk were located in all of these. It was up to us to find them. I like hunting in ponderosa pine because it's very similar to the Black Hills of South Dakota, where I learned how to bugle in the bulls. The first thing I did when we got there is I sighted in my rifle. I had been sighted in for shooting round balls, and I was switching to buffalo bullets. These are conical bullets similar to a maxi ball, but with a hollow point. They pack a lot more punch than a round ball. A lot of people question the killing power of a 50 caliber round ball on elk, which weighs about 180 grains. But there's no doubt that a 50 caliber, 385 grain hollow point buffalo bullet will do the job. I'm shooting mine out of a 50 caliber Hawken made by Thompson Center Arms.
And the rock, as we could all see, is still there.
Shot it right in the heart and it's still there. I don't believe
Let's
it. Those
see
rocks up here are tough. Once I had readjusted my sights, I felt confident that I could hit any broadside elk out to 100 yards. We hastily set up our camp and then both went out scouting. With only a short 5-day season, pre-season scouting was very important. We both located elk, but better yet, they located us. They kept us awake most of the night with their bugling. The next morning, Tom and I got up early and went out after them. They were still bugling something fierce. There was so much bugling out there that I thought I had died and gone to elk heaven. At first, we had a hard time keeping the wind in our favor. We finally got the wind right, and we moved on in. As we got closer, Tom and I heard separate bulls in 2 locations, and we decided to split up so that we each weren't going after the same bull. As I got closer and closer, I moved in to where 2 bulls were coming together. Since they were moving away in the timber, I had to move faster than I liked. All of a sudden, I spotted the bull up ahead of me. I was going to take an offhand shot, but I wasn't very steady, so I stopped him with a bugle. When the other bull behind him bugled, he looked away, so I decided to try to stalk him a little bit closer for a surer shot. But the cows saw me and they started to run, and they took the bull with them. I tried to stop him with another bugle as I sat down for a steadier shot. I'll tell you, I was shaking like crazy as I reloaded. The other bulls that had been out there had stopped bugling. He was out there stumbling around, and I thought I'd better get another load in there in a hurry. I thought that the other bulls would quit bugling for good, but the funny thing was, they stopped for only as long as it took me to reload, and by that time they were starting to bugle again. I finally got reloaded, and I moved up closer, but by that time he was down and moving his last. It was a good, swift kill. At a time like this, I've got mixed emotions which are hard to explain. I'm happy because I bagged this trophy animal, but at the same time, I'm filled with awe and respect and a bit of sadness at the death of such a magnificent beast. It's a feeling you can't explain to a non-hunter, but I've got great respect for the animals I hunt. But at the same time, I'm not really hunting them unless I'm pursuing them for the kill. This bull has long beams, fairly long tines, and good mass to his beams that carries out through the length of the antler. And I tell you what, he was a handful. I had to butcher him out by myself. Well, here he is after a lot of bugling and a lot of chasing. We started out from camp, which is probably about 2.5 miles away. We could hear him bugling most of the night. And we got up early this morning about 5 o'clock before it got light and started down their way. We didn't realize it was going to be as far as it was. Well, you'll just have to forgive me for babbling on, but I don't shoot a bull like this every day. After I caped and quartered him, I walked about 3 miles back to camp and found that I could drive right up to him. We didn't have to back him out a bit, about 10 yards maybe. Now that's what I call a lucky day. Our next hunt took place several years ago during the rut in an area that was just crawling with elk. This unit had a lot going for it for several reasons. First, this was a limited quota area. The area had a lot of elk because it was restricted to a small number of hunters each year. By talking to ranchers and local folks, I learned that this time of year, the elk were down low in the foothills in the oak brush. Chances for a trophy bull were great if my hunter could keep his finger up the trigger when he spotted one of the numerous smaller bulls. The night before season, we climbed to the top of the mountain and slept in the open under the moon and stars. The following morning, we got up well before first light and worked our way down the steep east slope where we could hear bugling activity from several different herds. We walked towards the source of the bugling in the darkness, making sure that the wind was in our favor. And at first light, we came to our first herd. The first herd that we ran into had a small 4-point bull and a spike. Only a cow and a small spike are visible here. After passing up the first small bull, we began glassing. We soon spotted a real nice bull up on the hillside. Jerry's pretty excited because he's a big one, a big 6x6.
Is that a good one? How big? Is it big? There's a bunch of them.
But before we can stalk in close enough for a shot, another hunter started shooting at him and downed him. And so ends our first opportunity for a big bull. Later that morning, we came upon a 4x5 bull and we stalked in close. But his antler size was disappointing after the big bull we had seen earlier, and Jerry decided to pass him up. But not before I teased him a little bit by making some cow and calf noises. We backed off and let this bull get back to his grazing. Then we climbed the next slope. Looking down on the other side, we spotted some more elk.
Top one is a bull. Is it?
We spotted a second herd of elk out on the opposite hillside.
Straight up above the cow. What do you think, Jerry? Is he big enough to try a stalk? Just a little bit small. Okay, let's let him go. Let's find a bigger one. There's more bugling over here. Okay, let's work our way down there. There's some rough stuff to go through.
In this rolling foothill country with scrub oak, the best way to stalk is to make sure the wind is right and to get a hillside between you and the elk. You can walk upright then. With the dry fallen leaves and the thick brush, it's impossible to be quiet. But walking on game trails and keeping a hillside between you and the elk helps considerably in cutting down on the noise which will reach the elk. The elk had some good trails cut in this brush, but the newly fallen leaves were still crunchy.
Hold it. There he is. Wait until I call him out in the open before you shoot, Jerry. Don't shoot yet. Okay, I've got a clear view. Go ahead and take him if you want. I'll stop him for you with a bugle.
Now the reason I'm bugling so much here is to make that bull stick around so that Jerry can get a good look at it and decide whether or not he wants to shoot. If he wants to shoot it now, he's got plenty of time to get a good rest and to get into a real steady shooting position. All he has to do is squeeze the trigger and the bull is his.
He didn't look that bad when he turned the corner. No, he looks pretty good. I can stop him for you.
After seeing his rack from a different angle, Jerry has second thoughts.
Are you going to take him or what? It's up to you. Get in front of me and be rest.
Bang! I was waiting for the shot and it never came. Jerry decided to hold off and wait for a bigger one, but it was sure exciting. So off we go, trying to find a bigger bull.
That ball should be around somewhere there.
If your bugles are realistic sounding enough, the cows will go right back to grazing if that's what they were doing.
Almost close enough for a shot at that point. Sounds like there's 2 or 3 balls down there. There he goes. Yeah. He's working man. This whole brush is a bear to go through. Look at that stuff.
We got a good fix on their location, and then we headed on over. On the way down this steep hill, I got a bull to answer my bugles. We moved in closer and came to a seat where the elk were drinking. Unfortunately, the bull was off to the right in the thick timber and we couldn't see him. Now Jerry's stalking in close and you can see a cow just over his head now. Moves in closer now. The cow's right over his head. I'll zoom up on him. Right there. And the bull was off to our right and he was just bugling like crazy. The bull sounded so close, I could swear that we'd be able to see him at any second. All of a sudden, a deer that was coming off to our left caught our scent and spooked off and went one way, and a couple cows went the other way. We never did see the bull. The wind had switched in the creek bottom. The bull spooked and became quiet. But as we looked up on the hillside, we could see the rest of the herd, and they were out there grazing. So we backed off a ways where we had a clearing, and we watched the cows, hoping that the bull would join them. But he just slipped away. The cows looked like they were going to graze down the hill and then go down for water, so we waited, hoping that the bull would join them. But he never did. It was uncanny. We thought we had a sure setup here, but we never even did see him. Later on that evening, just before it got dark, we saw a herd down below us, and there were 2 bulls in the bunch. There were 2 bulls down there, but they were both small ones, and Jerry decided to hold off. So far his willpower was doing good. He managed not to pull the trigger on any smaller bulls. A short time later, just as it was getting dark, we got into the timber and we had 2 bulls bugling at us, one in front of us and the other off to our left. At this point, Jerry is stalking cautiously forward, trying to spot the bull. I'm raking in the trees to cover up his footsteps. We approached the down bull cautiously. We wanted to make sure he was dead. It's good not to have any surprises here. He's dead. One shot in the neck, broke the spine and killed him instantly. A nice clean kill. Good job, Jerry.
Thank you. We got in here and I bugled. Yeah, and I bugled, and boy, he just roared up there, and he came down. You can see his body real good, not 50, 60 yards up there, but we never get a look at his horns. And he went around and kind of got downwind from us. So we were turned around bugling at him. Pretty soon this guy opened up. He just grunted like that, and he wouldn't come in any closer. So we tried to bugle this way, and he came in closer again one more time. I got a pretty good look at his head. He was a little bit bigger than this one. He was no monster either. And Jerry didn't see his head, so he went walking away. And then this one kept on. I started raking the tree and making noise, so I'd cover up a little bit of Jerry's footsteps. And Jerry came walking up there on the hill, and there he was raking on a tree, I guess, huh?
Yep, right there. He's raking on the tree. I thought he was about the same size, or I don't know. I thought he was a pretty good size.
Yeah, they can fool you when they're moving their antlers around, thrashing all over. They look a lot bigger than they are.
I saw he was big-bodied, and saw horns moving all over when he was raking on the tree. And I first elk got a little anxious.
Well, he'll be good eating meat.
Yeah.
Yeah, he is really big-bodied for a 4-point, I'll tell you that. And he got him right through the neck, so you didn't waste hardly any meat at all. You took one shot and he dropped right there where he was. Just
He
like
dropped and rolled right down the hill.
Well,
I'll go down and get the pickup truck and get the horse. We'll have to get him up tomorrow. It's nice. It'll be nice and cool tonight, so we'll hang the quarters and just lay them over logs so the heat dissipates. That ought to keep them pretty good. So the fun starts now.
Yep.
All the fun's over once you get them down. Let's get them to a little bit more level spot here. All the elk footage that you just saw during this hunt was shot during one day of the hunt. This area was unbelievable. Where is it? Well, I promise not to tell. Our next bow hunting scene took place during the 1986 bow hunt in Wyoming. This is towards the end of September, and we had a little bit of snow on the ground. Now, I didn't have time to fit this into Bullbusters 1, so I'm including it here as an excellent example of the type of calls I use to bring the bulls in close. On snowy days like this, the elk often stay out on the open meadows to feed long after daylight. This was 11 o'clock in the morning. We located a herd with a nice bull, but he was a herd bull who was more interested in his cows than he was in chasing an unseen bull bugling from the bushes. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to bring him in close. Now our gang of bull busters was already 4 for 6 for the bow hunt. I had already been successful in calling in a 6-point bull, which my brother had shot, and a spike, which Denny had shot. I was looking for something special, and this big guy would have fit the bill, but I just couldn't get him in. But by moving in close to the herd, I was able to call in this small satellite bull. Now these are the calls that I used to bring him into good bow hunting distance. I think you'll agree it would have been an easy bow shot, but I decided to pass him up. I was looking for something special, but it was fun to call him in close. Now when you do this cow and calf talk, you want to make sure that it can't pinpoint your position. So you point your grunt tube off to the side and point it away from the elk. Don't call when he's looking right at you. Now as you can hear, the other cows and calves in the herd are talking back to me. Now as long as the bull is coming your way, you don't have to call at all, or if you do, just give an occasional chirp or two. You don't want him to be alerted by too much calling. A lot of bow hunters spook off game because they draw their bow at the wrong time, or they draw too fast. Elk have good peripheral vision and can spot movement even when their head is down. Now as he looks my way, I freeze. Point the grunt tube off to the side and give a couple more chirps. And away he goes. Now there's your shot with a bow and arrow. A perfect broadside shot. Now, a lot of gun hunters think this bow hunting business is easy, but I'll tell you it's not. I've seen situations where bulls have been in this close, and the bow hunter drew at the wrong time, and the bull just turned and whirled, and before the bow hunter could get a shot out underway, the bull was gone. So this bow hunting is tough business. You can have them in 10, 12, 15 yards, and the bull can still get away. Now, this is a perfect shot opportunity right here. But most bow hunters would have drawn and shot long before this. The rule of thumb is to take the first good shot opportunity that you have. This is typical elk country in mid-June. Spring comes late in the high country. When it's hot summer down below, it's cool spring up high. The steep mountains and the sloping valleys make for an interesting mixture of habitat types, with pine, spruce, and fir providing shade, concealment, and security for the elk, and grasses in the meadows providing the bulk of their food. Like a lot of areas in the northern Rockies, water is abundant, with plenty of streams, marshes, and alpine lakes. With the warming weather and the receding snow, both elk and moose capitalize on the new succulent growth that emerges in the spring. The willows, grasses, and aquatic plants in the creek bottoms and marshes offer the moose their favorite sources of food and habitat. Moose are the largest member of the deer family in North America. The moose is not a graceful-looking animal, but its strength is readily apparent, as is its suitability for the type of terrain it inhabits. Unlike elk, moose are not herd animals. It's rare to find a sizable group of moose. It seems like they prefer to be loners, as they don't get along very well in each other's company. Because of its long legs and comparatively short neck, the moose must get down on its knees to graze upon grasses. Moose are browsing animals and prefer to browse on leafy twigs. Willow is one of their favorite foods, and it also feeds on birch and aspen. However, in the spring, they seem to relish the succulent sprouting grass near streams and ponds. Now here's a good example of moose acting unkindly towards one another. Those sharp hooves can inflict serious damage to a rival. If you're wondering what typical moose country looks like, you're looking at it right here. They love marshy areas with willows, grasses, and aquatic plants for feed, and willow for shade and security cover. The dark timber nearby offers shade from the hot summer sun and concealment from predators. But sometimes you'll find them way up high, well away from these lowland areas. The majority of moose live in areas where there's little disturbance by man, except during the hunting season. During the off-season, some seem to be downright trusting of man. However, contrary to its docile appearance, the moose can be a quick and furtive animal. Many a hunter has glassed a moose from long range and has begun a stalk, only to discover that his quarry has silently melted off into the bushes. Moose are at home in and around water. They often feed on the succulent green grass on the shoreline and on the aquatic plants below the surface of the water. But in a slow spring, willow is one of the first plants to bud out, and the moose really goes for that. Unless it's an abundant spring and grasses are flourishing. With their long legs and short necks, it's easier to walk in the water and graze on the shore. They don't have to bend so far. The sense of smell is highly developed in moose, and its sense of hearing is exceptional. A moose's eyesight is poor, probably because he relies on his senses of smell and hearing in the thick cover. He doesn't seem to recognize stationary objects as danger. When advancing on a moose, I watch the moose carefully. When he stares at me, I freeze. When he looks away, I move. They will often look at you, seeming not to comprehend what is going on, and you can get surprisingly close. One word of caution though, you don't want to get too close, because the moose is an unpredictable animal and may charge, especially during the rut. The moose has a long snout so that it can reach below the surface of the water to grasp aquatic plants. It seems to relish blowing bubbles with its nose. One would think that the noise he's making would make it easy for a predator to approach, but they have an uncanny ability to pick out the sounds of an approaching predator. The footage of this moose was taken the last week in May. You can see that he doesn't have much growth on his new set of antlers, but he's got 2.5 to 3 months to work on them. During the summer, the elk move high into the mountains. The melting snow leaves behind an abundance of water, which triggers rapid growth of new vegetation. You can see that there's an abundance of grass up there. There's far more grass than the elk could ever use. The terrain could support a lot more animals, except for one thing. The deep snows of winter drive the elk from the high country down into the low-lying valleys. The winter range is a critical element which decides how many elk can survive on a given range. Now, it's fun to go out during the summertime and combine an elk scouting trip with fishing. There's some really nice trout up in elk country, I'll tell you that. These are cutthroat trout on their spawning run up the Snake River in western Wyoming. Their progress has been temporarily halted by a small waterfalls. As they gather below the waterfall, they become susceptible to predators like bears and eagles. Other birds like ravens will feed on the carcasses left over from the larger predators. This Clark's nutcracker looks on with interest to see what might be available for him to scavenge. By the 1st of July, the 2- and 3-year-old bulls have a good start on the growth of their new set of antlers. If you live near elk country, it's a good idea to scout during the summertime. This makes you more familiar with the territory you may be hunting later on during the fall. It's also fun to see how close you can stalk up to the elk on their summer range. Being up close helps you become accustomed to the size of their antlers. If you've only hunted deer before, an elk with even a modest pair of antlers like this one can really look big and can give you a bad case of buck fever, or in this case, bull fever. That's especially true when he's up close during the bow season. Many hunters shoot the first bull elk that they see, and they are later disappointed by the size of the antlers. They wish they would have held off for a bigger one. The more elk you see at close range, the better you'll be at judging trophy quality, and the less apt you'll be at pulling that trigger or letting that bowstring go when you've got a bull in front of you that just doesn't quite match your idea of what a trophy should be. At the same time, you'll be less likely to get buck fever so bad that you can't aim or shoot properly. So I think it's a good idea to get used to seeing elk up close. The more elk you see up close, the more likely you'll be to control yourself at the moment of truth, especially if you're a bow hunter and you've got close-in shooting. Now, don't depend entirely on your summer scouting to make your fall hunt successful. Beware that elk move around a lot from summertime to fall. The location you find them during late July may not be the place they are at in September. This is caused by various things such as the weather, changes in their favorite source of food, too much activity by man, or simply because they move for the heck of it. One key that may tell you if the elk will be around in the fall is the presence of rubs on trees. If you are seeing elk during the summer and there are rub trees nearby, then this indicates that they will be using the same area during the breeding season. Now that's true unless they're influenced by the weather or unless they're disturbed by man's activities. One other word of caution: too much scouting activity by man during the summer may move elk out of the valley. They'll pick up and move to another area where they aren't being disturbed by man's activities. So don't let your scouting drive the elk out of the area. Stalking elk on their feeding grounds during the summer not only leads to great pictures, but it sharpens up your hunting skills. You soon learn how important it is to keep the wind in your favor and to keep the terrain in your favor. You learn when to move and when to remain motionless. You learn that you can get away with a certain amount of noise and with very slow movements. You learn when it's safe to move fast and when to freeze, or move only at a crawl. This bull is going to have at least 7 points on each side. He's going to have a nice wide rack. Now this footage was taken on July 5th, so he's got several weeks to extend the 6th and 7th points. During the summer, he's buddied up with a nice 6x7 bull. Now although this bull is not quite as symmetrical and he's narrower, his points are longer and more developed than the 7x7. Stalking during the summertime also teaches you the elk's body language. Now this bull heard me or caught a small movement which he can't identify. Because I'm wearing camouflage and I'm in a blind made of netting, he doesn't recognize me as a human or as a predator. But he's still suspicious. Like deer, the elk will move its head from side to side and up and down to try to get a different perspective. They'll also use the head bob to try to trick you into moving. If this doesn't work, they'll try some other tricks. They'll pretend they're putting their head down to graze, and then lift it up suddenly to try to catch you moving. If this trick doesn't work, he may go to feeding or scratch his nose, or use some other diversionary tactic to make you think he's forgotten all about you. He might even turn away from you for a short time, but you can bet that the next time he turns his head, he'll be looking right straight at you. Now while he's been going through these antics, he's been watching you out of the corner of his eye. You can bet you're going to have a tough time stalking him. Our next rifle hunt takes place in the high country of northern Utah during the middle part of September. Normally, the bulls should be bugling pretty good at this time in September, but it had been a hot and dry month, and we didn't hear any bugling at all. Hunting pressure from other hunters sure didn't do anything to help our cause. Because of other commitments, we arrived several days after the season started. That was a definite mistake. Several hunters had heard bulls bugle and had begged them the first day of the hunt. But the elk soon quieted down after the first shots were fired. This area consists of a lot of dark timber like spruce and fir and lodgepole pine, and with aspens in the lower country. The area had a lot of streams and ponds, so water was everywhere, and we couldn't really key on that. Since the bulls weren't bugling, we tried sneak hunting and stalking through the timber. But with one hunter and two cameramen, it was impossible to be quiet enough to move in close to the elk. They heard us coming long before we reached them, and they melted away into the timber without hardly leaving a trace. Hoping to get away from the hunting pressure near the roads, we packed up the horses and hiked about 5 miles back into the backcountry. Having horses when elk hunting is a great advantage in getting away from the heavily hunted areas near the roads. You can pack enough food and gear on 2 horses to easily last 3 hunters for over a week or more. After the roads quit, the only way to get way back in away from the crowd is by horses or by backpack. Now I'd prefer to have a whole pack string of animals, but I can't afford to feed and care for that many horses. But just having 2 horses carrying your gear saves you a lot of hard work and gets you into hunting camp in a lot fresher condition than you would be if you were carrying a heavy backpack. Horses are a good way to cover a lot of ground in a hurry, so I use the horses to scout for elk. Now, a lot of people hunt on horseback and say the elk really aren't spooked by horses. But I think that when they are hunted much, they learn to associate horses with man and man with danger. I think I can hunt a lot quieter and a lot more effectively on foot than I can on horseback. But this is up to you. We got into camp late in the afternoon. We set up our tent, tied the horses, and made a quick hunt before it turned dark on us. We spotted a couple of different moose and saw some elk sign in the meadows near the creek bottom, but we weren't lucky enough to catch any bulls out in the open. We returned back to camp, cooked our supper, and turned in early. Next morning, we got up well before first light and hunted the meadows, hoping to catch the elk out grazing, where we had encountered the sign. but nothing. When we didn't see any there, we entered the dark timber and still hunted to the top of the ridge. Now we'd gone through feeding grounds in the meadows, feeding grounds in the timber, and bedding grounds in the darker timber. But with 2 hunters and a cameraman, it was difficult to remain quiet enough to sneak up on the elk. Now I tried bugling off and on as we covered new territory, but we didn't hear any responses. Although we were finding fresh tracks and fresh droppings, we weren't lucky enough or quiet enough to sneak up on the elk. We climbed high above timberline and looked for the elk up there. Now I had spotted them up there during my preseason scouting with my spotting scope. In fact, I'd seen them out there grazing in the open at 9 o'clock in the morning on a bright sunny day. But now, there's nothing to be seen. Sometimes the first heavy frost will kill the grasses up high and make them unpalatable for the elk. But this didn't seem to be the case here, because we were seeing a lot of fresh tracks and fresh droppings up there, out in the open, and also fresh droppings and beds in the timber nearby. Now this indicated to us that the elk were coming out here to graze at night. The trouble was, we just couldn't catch them out in the open. Evidently, they were all down in the timber for the day. After the rifle season starts, the elk wisen up in a hurry. One morning we hunted along a creek bottom in meadows where we had seen quite a bit of sign which indicated they were grazing there. We came across a small band of elk which had some cows and calves and 1 spike. We weren't interested in a bull that small, so we passed him up. At another time, I would have welcomed a couple 100 pounds of tender young elk in my freezer, but not right now. We were looking for a big burly booger with big antlers. Now the weather had turned a lot colder than it was the previous days, and there was a good frost in the mornings. I thought that the colder weather would set the bulls off and that they would begin bugling, but no such luck. Whatever it was, the elk weren't bugling, whereas they normally were up here this time of year. Oh, the elk were there all right, judging by the fresh tracks and the fresh droppings, but for some reason they just weren't bugling. Well, some years are like that, especially if it's hot and dry. But that's elk hunting. It's always unpredictable. Well, Jerry and I are primarily bow hunters, and the archery season was on up in Wyoming. Since the bulls weren't bugling here, we decided to pack up our gear and head on to Wyoming. As we got back to the truck and horse trailer, we found that the hunter in the neighboring camp had downed a small 6-point bull. We had to stop on over and ask him what the story was. At least that's the excuse that Jerry gave. He may have had an ulterior motive, seeing he hadn't seen a female in a few days now. Well, it turned out that they'd been hunting hard for 6 straight days. They had covered a lot of miles both on foot and on horseback, and they hadn't had a bull answer until the 6th day. The hunter was riding his horse on a ridge in the evening and bugling, and this bull answered. Now the bull started going the other way at first while he was bugling, but then he tried some cow talk, and the bull turned around and came on in. He had a relatively close shot in the thick timber. 1 shot and it was all over but the packing. And it was quite a pack-out job too. He brought the head and horns out last night on his saddle horn, and today they were going back in to retrieve the rest of the meat. They said they were about 6 miles back in. Now, when we went visiting the neighbors, I left my horses back at the horse trailer with some alfalfa cubes and some oats. I told them to go ahead and feed themselves, and if they wanted, take off their own packs too. Old Red, he's a bit of an escape artist. They became impatient and had to come on over to see the other horses. They must have really been curious to leave their treats behind. I thought we'd be having a buck kicking contest here in no time at all. Old Red and Sunshine have just got to see who's around here and trade some war stories with the other horses. Now, if you like horses, it's fun to take your horses along on an elk hunt. But of course, it involves some added responsibility. It's true they can get you a lot farther back into the backcountry and they can pack out your animal. But at the same time, you've got to be watching them and tending them, and you've got the problem with what do you do with the horses when you're out hunting. Well, if you hobble both animals, they're liable to take off and head back to the truck. So you've got to tie one and hobble the other one. You've got to feed and water them, and you've got to make sure they don't get tangled up in the ropes. Sometimes it's a lot less complicated to hunt without horses. But if you packed out a couple elk on your back, I'll guarantee you you'll wish you had horses. Yeah, horses are a hassle, but if you're a serious elk hunter, it's hard to get by without them. Now, if you're doing a lot of packing, it's best to have the regular type pack saddles and panniers. But if you pack your horses only occasionally, you can get by well enough with the type of panniard that fits over the cantle and saddle horn. Now, I like to train my horses both to ride and to pack. That way, when I get into elk camp, all I have to do is unload, and I've got 2 saddle horses and 2 riding saddles. If you get an animal down, you can ride on in, put on the panniards, load up the elk, and then walk them out. Now, getting out in steep terrain, like we encountered during last year's hunt, can sometimes be a real experience and can add memories to the hunt that will last you a lifetime. And they can also make for a lot of interesting tales around the hunter's campfire. I'm sure that Denny will never forget the experience of leading out Old Big Red down a steep mountain as he packed out his bow kill during last year's hunt. It was a question of who was leading who. And my brother Tim won't soon forget the feeling of triumph and success as he packed out last year's 6-point bull. It's a proud feeling to be leading that horse when he's got your elk on his back. And it's a heck of a lot more pleasurable than packing out an elk on your own back with a backpack. I'll tell you that. Now, getting back to our rifle hunt. While we're up on the mountain, we ran into another hunter who had bagged a small bull with his rifle. His friend was lucky enough to capture the footage on a home video camera, and Dale was generous enough to allow me to show the footage here. On the first day of the hunt, he had a bugling session with a bull, but he couldn't call it in. Then some other hunters started to work on the bull. At about 10:30 in the morning, Dale and his wife and his friend were sitting near a large opening when a small herd of cows came running through the meadow. The bull soon followed. Let's watch the action. The elk were evidently spooked by hunters in the timber on the opposite side of the clearing. They came running across the meadow.
Oh, here comes the bull out. Here comes the bull. Oh, look at his horns.
There's your bull, Mike.
Sit still. Look at the dome. You got him, honey. You got him. Let him go down. Let him go down. Oh.
Jeez. Good job, buddy.
Get the mighty hunter.
What do you think, Dale?
I love it. The calves are still going up there. Wonderful.
Well, a lot of hunters would say that Dale was lucky, but a lot of hunters wouldn't have been sitting in the trees at the edge of a meadow at 10:30 in the morning. A lot of unlucky hunters would have been back at camp or back at their vehicles complaining about their bad luck, or the lack of elk, or that the weather was too hot, or that the bulls weren't bugling. Now, Dale wasn't back at camp. He was out in the timber hunting. That's where a good hunter spends most of his time. After all, you don't find too many elk wandering around near camp or near the roads. The fact is, too many unsuccessful hunters spend too much time at camp or near the roads or doing other unproductive things. The more time you spend actually hunting in productive areas, the luckier you'll be. Several years ago, my wife Kathy got drawn for one of the few elk tags in the Black Hills of South Dakota. That's near Mount Rushmore, and we hunted 10-15 miles from there. To make sure that she was ready for the hunt, we practiced shooting throughout the summer. Put that second shot in there.
I just hit my head.
As you can see, I had a lot of work to do. Kathy had shot my lighter rifles before, but she had never shot full loads in a 30-06. Now, it's a mistake to do all your shooting from a bench rest, so I had her practice from practical hunting positions like the sitting position she's using here. Now, at first, she was pretty slow in getting off her follow-up shots, so I demonstrated how to do it. We worked on that, and she improved both her speed and her accuracy. You never know what to expect when you're hunting. You might have an easy standing shot at a broadside bull, but don't count on it. Here are some other situations you've got to be prepared for. You may have to pick a spot as the bull is moving through timber. In this type of situation, rather than trying to track the bull as he's moving through timber, I pick a spot ahead of the bull and I shoot as soon as his vitals enter the opening. If you try to track the bull, you're likely to hit a tree. There's also a possibility that you may have a moving shot at a spooked animal and you have to get into a shooting position in a hurry. Now imagine the excitement and the rushed feeling you would have if this big bull was running out in front of you during the rifle season. Could you quickly guess the distance and know where your bullet would hit? Would you know how far to lead him? Could you quickly get into a steady shooting position and track him in your scope? Could you pull off this shot? Well, for an expert rifleman, this bull could be had. For an inexperienced shooter, it would take a lot of luck to down this bull. That's why practice can make the difference between going home with a trophy rack or going home empty-handed. Now as the bull stops, could you estimate the distance and know how far your bullet would drop before it got there? Are you shooting a caliber with enough punch to drop the bull with an angling shot? Are you good enough to make this shot? Now these are questions that you must ask yourself and be prepared to answer. If you can't make the shot, then hold your fire. You don't want to wound a beautiful animal like this. Sometimes a herd or a bull is only mildly spooked, but begins to move away. You can almost always stop the bull for a few precious seconds by giving a bugle. But be prepared to shoot because you've only got a few seconds when he stops. Take careful aim and fire. Sometimes you'll be in a position where the only way you can get off a shot is to shoot offhand. If you sit down, branches or vegetation will be in your way, so you have to stand. Now if you've practiced your offhand shooting, you've trained your muscles to be steady enough to make the shot. But if your sights are wobbling all over the place, then hold your fire and try to move into a location where you can take a shot from a steadier position. Well, let's get back to Kathy's elk hunt in South Dakota. As the elk season approached, we made several scouting trips into the area. We'd spotted some real nice bulls out there, and Kathy promised to hold out for a real big one. Now, to say it is one thing. To have the resolve to do it after several days of hard hunting is another. During our scouting, we'd seen this one particular bull several times near the same area. He was a real trophy, and I wanted Kathy to try to hold out for him. At least for the first couple of days out. After all, we felt we could always get another one. Being able to hunt with a rifle early during the rut seemed like a sure thing. But as you know, the big ones don't get old by being down. The first day out, we spotted 7 bulls, but they were mostly spikes and raghorns. But the big old fellows that we were looking for just didn't seem to be around. Oh, I bugled in this medium-sized bull, but he had a defective antler on one side, and he wasn't what we were looking for. Towards the evening of the first day of the hunt, we spotted 2 bulls with a small group of cows on the edge of a meadow. We were able to move in close, and I gave a bugle. The bulls responded to my bugling by coming in closer. At this point, Kathy was pretty excited, but I was hoping that she would pass up the shot.
What do you think? Should I take him?
It's up to you. It's your hunt.
Which one's bigger?
The second one.
I don't know. We've seen better. Maybe
Yeah.
I'll wait.
Okay.
It takes a great deal of self-restraint to pass up a bull that's within sure shooting range. But if you shoot the smaller ones, your hunt is over, and you miss trying out for the bigger one until next year. If you're going to be a trophy hunter, you have to be selective. Since we didn't have very much cover, the elk finally spotted our location. The cows began barking, and pretty soon the whole herd was alerted and took off. But not before the bulls tempted us again. At a time like this, a hunter has second thoughts. Notice the alarm posture and the bark the cow gives to alert the other members of the herd. A warning bark like that attracts attention from the other animals, and they soon stare at the source of danger that she's looking at. All eyes and ears are looking for danger. At a time like this, it's almost impossible to move any closer at all. If you're going to shoot, you'd better shoot quick. Well, the next few days we had a lot less hunting action. Little did we know that two factors would work against us. The weather turned really hot for September, and the bulls quit bugling. We hunted hard all the next day and saw nothing but a couple other hunters. We heard no bugling at all until right before dark. We closed the distance fast and got him within easy rifle range, but it was too dark to judge the size of his antlers, and it was past legal shooting time. By the afternoon of the third day, we had not seen another bull which we could shoot. Now I'm primarily a bow hunter, and my friends had already left ahead of me for an archery hunt in Wyoming, and I was eager to join them. They forecasted hot weather, and this early in September, the bulls don't bugle much when it's hot. We decided to set our sights lower and take the next legal bull that we saw. Just before dark, we were skirting the open meadows just outside of their heavy bedding cover, where they seek shelter from the hot sun during the day. Suddenly, we came across a small bull with some cows, and things happened fast. Since the herd was spooked, Kathy had to sit and shoot before the cameraman got set up and zoomed in. You can see the bull on the left side of the screen about 1/3 of the way up.
Nice elk, Kathy.
Yeah, it's not bad.
The practicing we did that summer really paid off. Kathy made 2 out of 3 vital hits at approximately 200 yards.
Yeah, they're sure a pretty animal.
The elk only went about 20 yards and died a swift, humane death.
That one that came out the other night, that raghorn, he was about that color. Real pretty color.
That'd be a nice cape. Too bad the rack wasn't moving right there.
Yeah. Well, you got a good shot in there.
Got the old third shot with 180.
No, I tell you, them elk are tough.
And then when
See where you hit them right there.
Well, he wasn't the trophy bull that we were after, but Kathy was pretty happy with him nonetheless. She told me that she would have been perfectly happy to shoot a spike for her first bull. Well, we were sorry to have to move out of the beautiful Black Hills of South Dakota, but there's a lot of other good hunting country in the West. In a moment, we'll take you on a bow hunt for moose and then for elk. But first, let's talk about what it takes to get prepared for the bow hunting season. Now, my favorite form of hunting is hunting with the bow and arrow. I like it because it's a real challenge. A bow and arrow is a short-range weapon, and it's difficult to master the art of shooting a bow accurately. Now, you can pick up a rifle off the shelf, sight it in, shoot it a few times, and a hunter can go out and shoot an elk several hundred yards away. But with a bow and arrow, your maximum range is 30 to 50 yards, depending upon how skilled you are. A good bow hunter should be practicing with a bow for several months before the archery season begins. It takes months of practice to become proficient with a bow and arrow. And when you practice, don't just shoot at bullseye targets at known distances. You've got to train yourself to pick a small aiming point on an animal's vitals. You've got to be able to judge the distances accurately. You've got to be able to shoot accurately under various conditions, such as uphill, downhill, across ravines, through vegetation, and in different lighting conditions. You've got to be able to shoot from the kneeling position and other contorted positions. Don't just shoot from standing. Now, I do a lot of shooting through trees, so that I learn where my arrow will be at different points in its trajectory. That way, I'll know if it can make it over or under a branch that may be in the way of the flight path. Now, it doesn't hurt to shoot at long range in practice because it teaches you your limitations in judging distance and about your limitations in accuracy. When shooting at live game, don't shoot any farther than the distance you can hit him in the vitals every time. Now, I wouldn't shoot at an elk this far away unless he was already hit. As you'll see, we're shooting off to the right in the gut area. Now, this might be caused by the slight wind, or it might be caused by the slope of the hill, causing us to cant our bows. You don't want to wound an elk, so when you're practice shooting, be honest with yourself. If you can't hit accurately at the longer distances, then pass up the shots. You owe it to the animal. Prior to the bow season, I practiced shooting while wearing my bow hunter's gear. I'm trying out a jacket I may be using during the bow season to find out if the sleeve is interfering with the bowstring. I'm also wearing the backpack I carry, so I get used to the feel of it when I shoot. And I have my grunt tube slung around my neck so I can get used to moving it out of the way of the bowstring. It's better to find out now that your gear isn't right, rather than find out later on when you have a big old bull before you. After all, those chances come all too seldom out in the wild. Why not learn during practice? I hit that sleeve again. The moose is a big animal, but he can be cleanly taken with a bow and arrow if you use a heavy enough bow and razor-sharp broadheads. Due to the heavy muscles and thick ribs, I recommend a bow at least 65 pounds. The moose is an animal that likes to stay in the thicker cover. They seem to never offer you a decent shot with a bow and arrow. It seems like there's always branches and vegetation in the way. Oh, sometimes you can get lucky and get some real good footage during the off-season. But don't think it's easy to get this close when the hunting season is on. A situation like that would be just too good to be true during the hunting season. Besides willows and aspen, the moose like to graze on the grass and forbs which grow in the openings in the timber. In the shade, a moose looks almost black, but in sunlight, their coat can be reddish brown to black. A moose is an impressive, powerful animal that I have gained a lot of respect for since I've begun photographing them. The Shiras moose can weigh over 1,200 pounds, and he's not afraid to attack an intruder. Sometimes a photographer makes the mistake of allowing a moose to graze in too close to him. I was so wrapped up in filming this bull that I didn't realize that I was allowing him to get just too close. Now it looks like he's going away from me here, but all of a sudden, he stops and changes his mind. He decides to teach the intruder a lesson. He turned around and came right for me. Now I wish I could have left the camera running here or had a second camera. You would have seen a lot of arm waving and cussing and shouting. But I finally turned him around. But I'll tell you what, I've still got flashbacks of the experience. During the summer, the moose are plagued by mosquitoes and black flies. This one apparently has a fly up his nose. I'm not sure if they can bite through that thick hide or not, but you can see that his rump is just covered with insects. And the moose doesn't have much of a tail, so he can't swat them off like a horse does. To locate moose, you've got to cover a lot of territory. Their domains are always based on abundant water. Lakes and streams are kind of an anchor in their habitat, so key in on the water. The moose also like to feed on the moss that hangs from dead branches. This one has learned that he can knock off some of the insects by using overhanging branches as a brush. When you bow hunt moose and elk in timber like this is the kind of shot opportunity you may be presented with. You've got to time your shot as he passes through an opening. Part of your practice should involve shooting at moving targets. Unless you can hit a moving target consistently, you should pass up shots like that. In early September, the moose rub their antlers on trees to scrape off the velvet and to prepare themselves for the rut. Culling moose during the rut is an exciting technique that can bring about some dramatic close-in action when it works. The average hunter has had few opportunities to hear what a moose sounds like, so they have no idea how to imitate them. During a bow hunt, I was lucky enough to record the action as I called in a bull and cow. Here are the grunts that I used to call them in. The traditional way to call moose is by using a megaphone made out of birch bark. Now, I'm not an expert, but I found that I can do a fairly good imitation by cupping my hands and giving a series of deep guttural grunts that start low in my stomach. The moose lose a lot of their natural caution during the rut. They've been known to attack cars and even trains during the heat of the rut. So it's not surprising when they walk by a mere bow hunter with nothing more than an ornery glance. That twangy sound is the sound of the cow. Now try to imagine the heart-thumping excitement of the bow hunter as the bull approaches within easy bow range. It's hard to keep cool in a situation like this. This is where a lot of people go to pieces. All of a sudden, the bull became suspicious when Jerry shifted to draw his bow. It would have been a perfect quartering away shot, but Jerry decided to pass it up. It was early during the hunt, and Jerry was thinking about a bigger bull that we'd seen and stalked earlier. We'd try to stalk, but he detected our presence and faded off into the willows. We went in after him, but it was just too noisy with two people, one trying to carry the camera. We were hoping that we could spot the bigger bull again and give him another try. Now I'd like to show you the results of another successful hunt on national forest land. Moose have good hearing and can be difficult to approach. This one detected my stalk and ran off across the meadow. Now by reading his body language, I could tell that he was bothered but not really scared because he walked off slowly. When he resumed grazing, I gave him time to settle down, and then I made a big detour in the timber on the downwind side of the clearing, and I stalked in where I thought he'd enter the timber on the opposite side. As you can see, I picked the right spot. As he got closer, my heart was pounding with excitement, and I was anticipating good shooting. The bull caught a glance of me moving, and he stared right at me. Now when a bull looks at you, don't move a muscle, just freeze. I don't like to stare an animal in the eye because I believe that they can feel it, much like you can feel someone staring at you in the same room. Now even though he lowers his head to feed, I don't make the mistake of moving right away because he's still looking right at me. You've got to give them time to forget that they saw something. Finally, the bull turned off to the side and presented me with a perfect broadside shot at close range. That was what I'd been waiting for. You couldn't ask for a better shot than this. I think you'll agree I could have easily made the shot, but I wasn't hunting with a bow, I was hunting with a camera. You don't have to kill to be successful. You can record your successes on film and watch them over and over again, and the animal lives on to be hunted again. Now I like camera hunting, but you've got to have a bow or a gun in your hands, and you've got to be truly hunting to bring out that feeling of quivering, primitive excitement that was passed on by our long ago hunting ancestors. Now let's get on with our actual bow hunt. Now listen to the vocalizations of the bull and the cow as they rake on a tree. You can see that the cow is really excited as she rubs her head and neck on the tree. This is unusual behavior, and it probably occurs only during the courtship. Once again, a bull approaches and presents us with a near-perfect shooting opportunity. The excitement builds as the bull moves closer and closer. If only he had bigger antlers. Unlike elk, moose do not gather harems. Rarely will a bull be seen with two cows. The bull stays with a cow for several days during the courtship period. Once she's successfully bred, he seeks out another. Several days later, our hunt was drawing to a close. We hadn't been able to get within bow and camera range of any bigger bulls. Suddenly, I got a bull to answer my grunts. We stalked in closer and found a good spot for an ambush.
Good hit. Did you get a good vital?
Yeah, right behind the leg.
All right, great.
He won't go far.
Okay, man. We're in the moose meat. Hey, you know what? You forgot your face paint. Oh, shit.
The wounded bull moved off into the timber. We gave him plenty of time to expire and then began the tedious tracking job. Unfortunately, darkness overtook us and it was too dark to film the butchering and caping. Now this isn't a very big trophy, but he provided a lot of meat and some very exciting memories. My elk bow hunt this year took place in western Wyoming, but we'll take you along to a couple other states too where I've called in some bulls. Come and join us on the 4th day of the hunt. We invite you inside of our teepee for a storytelling session. We've already called in several bulls, and here's what we've got so far. This is my friend Kenny Spring. If you remember in Bull Busters, the very first day that he ever hunted elk, he bagged a 5x6 with his bow and arrow. Well, this is the 3rd day he ever hunted elk, and he bagged a 6-point up there, almost in the same area. Now Kenny's hunted 3 days with a bow and arrow, and that's his 2nd bull elk. Prior to the season, he'd spotted a herd that had been using this particular meadow on a regular basis. On the first morning of the season, he tried to stalk, but he just couldn't get in close enough. The 2nd morning of the season, he got in close and got between the bull and his cows. The rest of the herd moved away, but the bull seemed to come on back for one of the cows. He came by Kenny at a distance of about 12 yards. As Kenny drew his bow, the bull spotted him and took off, but he stopped about 30 yards away. Kenny got a good shot in the lungs, and the bull went down inside of 150 yards. Not too bad for 3 days of hunting, I'll tell you that. Now we got some footage of elk in here, and these aren't the ones that he actually stalked, but this is a very similar situation to what he was in. Now let's take a look at one of the bulls that I called in some ponderosa pine. Well, this is one of those bulls that sits back in the timber and just barks at you. A lot of people don't know how to handle these. I don't either most of the time, but this time I was lucky enough to call him in. And these are the calls that I use to bring him in close. Now I'm not saying these will work all the time, but it's worth a try. As he turned and went away from me, I gave these grunts and some cow talk, and he turned around and came back in. Now from where I'm situated, it would be a tough shot with a bow. You'd have a hard time getting the arrow past all those branches. So I decided to gamble. Rather than risk a shot, I tried to get him in closer, but it didn't work. Now if I had positioned my partner 15 or 20 yards ahead of me, he'd have had an easy shot. Proper positioning means a lot when bow hunting. The thick branches saved this bull's life. During the bugling season, the technique I use for locating bulls is to walk the high ridges or other areas with good elk sign and bugle. I try to cover as much ground as possible so that I have more chance of running into a bull that is willing to come into the bugle. Once I locate one, I make sure the wind is right, and then I move in closer. I bugle frequently on my way in so that I can keep track of his whereabouts. If I'm farther away, or if he's moving away, I'll run to close the distance. I don't worry too much about footsteps or breaking branches. Just don't make any unnatural sounds like metallic sounds or rubbing nylon against trees. Once I get in closer, I bugle again to keep him heated up and so that I can pinpoint his location. Once I'm in close, I'll set up and try to call the bull in to me. This is a perfect place for a setup. You're in the shadows and you've got trees behind you and you've got a few trees in front of you, but you still got clear shooting lanes in this direction, and this direction. And the bull is in front, so he's most likely to come in this way. Now when you get into position, grab a stick and just break off all the branches around there that might interfere with your shot. Doesn't hurt to make noise because the bull himself will be raking trees. Then to entice him farther, grab a stick and do some raking out of trees. course, you got your arrow in your bow, and you're ready to shoot as it comes in. One thing that some bow hunters do is they take a branch and leave out one of their arrows and put that in their arrow holder, in the quiver, and it covers up here. When the bull is coming in, you hide your face behind it, so it looks like a tree. So that's all you can see. Then you draw slowly. Several years ago, I used this bugling and setting up technique to locate a bull, and then I moved in close. I wanted to move in right next to the clearing, but because there were other elk out there, I had to set up back farther than I wanted.
There he is.
Pretty soon, here he came, right across the middle of the clearing. But he came by just outside of my self-imposed bow range, and I had to pass him up. Later that evening, I located another bull, and I called him over a hill right to me for a nice open shot. Now watch this. Right behind the front shoulder. By the time we waited for him to bleed out, it was dark. We tracked him by flashlight and found him about 100 yards away. We quartered him in the dark and then spent the night in there. The next day we packed him out on our backs. He was a nice 6x7 bull. This year's hunt in Wyoming, we hunted hard for 8 straight days. I bugled in 6 bulls that we either couldn't get or that we passed up. I called in a 4x4 bull on the first day of the hunt, but neither Jerry nor I wanted to fill our tag that early on a bull that size. My opportunity came on the last day of the hunt. I called the bull in to about 25 yards away, but I had trees in the way and I couldn't shoot. He turned around and started going away from me, so I gave a strong bugle and some grunts. First he looked like he was going to keep walking away from me, but then he turned around and came back out. Now I'm set up to the side of the cameraman, so we don't quite have the same perspective here. But the bull comes through an opening and presented me with a slow walking shot. We gave him some time to bleed out, and then we took up the blood trail. Okay, you can see his hoof marks right here. There's some more blood on this log, so we jumped over the logs. Okay, got good blood. It's spraying pretty good. Okay, a lot of guys just look on the ground for blood. But if you look on bushes like this, you'll see where he rubbed his body against it. You can see his right side went through and brushed right there, and it's just covered with blood. Oh, here's the arrow. Well, we got pretty much penetration. It went in at least that far. That's about 20 inches. That should be almost sticking out the other side, or it will be sticking out the other side. Looks like some bubbles on it. Doesn't smell like gut or anything, so I think we missed the stomach. Pretty sure we're in the liver. The way the blood looks real dark, I think we're in the liver. Goes right straight down this way. So we got scuff marks here, scuff marks here. Scuff marks here. What is that? What is that? Looks like he's floating in the marsh. You see it? Looks like a rock, but I think it's him. Sure enough. Well, there he is, Jerry.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thanks. Well, I thought we'd never find him. We sure had to do a lot of looking. Ran out of blood, and we were just following by the prints. Oh, took quite a bit. We finally found you. Now we gotta get him out of there.
I thought I was some kind of bad omen or something.
Oh,
Man.
I thought that's gonna be a job now. I gotta get my waders on. Hoping the wind would blow him over, but apparently his antler's stuck on the bottom or something. It's not over these waders.
It is. You're gonna get wet.
Whoa! Ah, it's over! Oh, it's cold! Oh! Oh! Oh, in fact, he just broke his antler off last night. Bloody.
Whoa! Come on, sunshine.
Put him on old Big Red. Whew. Whew. Long day. It's gonna be longer.